I've got one flame to burn, one race that I can say I ran.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 21047.com podcast. My name is Keith Cartwright. I am the host of this show, and I'm really glad to have you along listening in today, wherever it is that you're listening and whenever it is that you might be listening in. I'm just grateful to count you among the listeners of this episode today. This episode today is sponsored by Kimberly Yenzer. Kimberly is a longtime supporter of this program, a longtime supporter of the 21047.com mission and vision. And Kimberly, along with her sidekick, Danielle Marie, was at the finish line of my first marathon, ready to hand me the 26.2 sticker that now is proudly on the back of my car. I think that's the first sticker that was ever on the back of my car, so that sticker meant an awful lot. So she's been there through the thick and the thin of this running journey. She's always there to support me when I take on some crazy notions like different races and this idea here, the fact that she supported this idea, the 21047.com podcast and everything that goes along with it from the very beginning, gave me a lot of confidence and courage to keep going with it. So here we are, some 40, episodes later, and still going strong. So thank you, Kimberly. Kimberly supports me through the Patreon platform. Patreon is a place where listeners and family and friends and just folks who want to support what I'm doing here, they can go and back me financially, which allows me to free up more time, free up more opportunities to chase down running stories, to share them with folks out there, and just try to share this love for running, this support for running, and just this parallel that comes between a running journey and a life and faith journey. And I just value the opportunity to share those stories. So if you're interested, might be interested in partnering with me through Patreon, you can go to my website, 21047.com, click on the support tab, and you will hear more about Patreon. I'm trying to do some different things here lately with Patreon. I've now opened up a private Facebook group for Patreon supporters, which will be trying to do some cool things as we move toward and forward with this year. Hoping to do some live podcast episodes where folks can watch in on the interviews, and in some cases maybe even pose some questions and provide some feedback live and in real time. So I will be keeping you posted as that first event comes up. So today's episode, I had the privilege of interviewing Sid Busch. Sid is known really throughout much of the running community. Sid runs for our fallen military men and women, and his story after interviewing him is a powerful one. The man loves America. He loves those who are willing to fight and serve to give us the freedoms that we as Americans have. And I have the added bonus after this interview. Sid is going to be running his last and final marathon number 205. I'm stuck on one, so that resonates with me a little bit. I'm going down there to do take two for my second marathon, my second attempt at completing my marathon number 2. And here this 72-year-old, just beautiful man will be down there trying to conquer number 205. So I really look forward to meeting Sid down there. It's a pleasant surprise that this Little Rock, Arkansas journey really came out of nowhere for me. And now, pieces like Sid Busch coming together where that will be part of this story is a beautiful thing. So anyhow, it was a pleasure getting to know Sid. I can't wait for you to get to know him a little bit, be inspired by him, maybe be moved to honor some of your runs for these men and women that Sid supports. So here we go, Sid Busch. I want to welcome Sid Busch to the 21047.com podcast. So welcome, Sid.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I have a friend of mine actually sent me your story. She had come across you in a couple of races. So then I started digging into your running journey and got fascinated by it myself. But why don't you tell us, how did you get started in this running journey?
Started in 1981. I served in the Navy on submarines, and in 1981 I ruptured a disc in my back, and the Navy was going to medically disqualify me. So I made a deal with them that if I could run a marathon, it proved I was 100% fit for duty. So I ran my first marathon in Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia, and kind of enjoyed it. Hadn't realized how much pain was waiting for me later on. Did a few marathons, and in 2001, on September 11th, my cousin, who I had run 6 marathons with, was killed at the World Trade Center. So the next year, I ran all 6 in his memory. And I ran into a gentleman who had started a group called Running in Honor of Fallen Heroes. And we would run our marathons in honor of a young man or woman who was serving in the military, had lost their lives in the war against terror, and give our medals to the family as our way of showing that their loss has not gone unnoticed. He was going to law school and had to drop out, and I kind of ended up inheriting it. And originally my goal was that if nobody ever knew my name, it would be fine. If somebody said at the end of a run, did you see that guy carrying the American flag running in honor of so-and-so? But somehow my name got out, and people started contacting me, asking me if I would do them the honor of running for their son and daughter, and there's no way I could say no. So it took on a life of its own.
Yeah, so just so everybody's clear about the whole scope of your story, number one, I believe you are 72 years old now, Sid, is that correct?
Yeah, next month, April 26th, I turn 72.
I'm April 27th. I won't quite be 72. I'll be turning 54, but I'm rapidly catching you, buddy. And then the other the other piece to that is I think you're going to be running in Little Rock here in March. Is that right?
Right. March 4th, I believe it'll be this year.
Yeah, we'll be there together. And what marathon will that be? What number?
I'll be marathon 205. Hopefully I will complete it, and it'll be my last marathon. My body just does not respond well anymore to 26.2 miles.
72 years old, running your 205th marathon. So I'm curious, Sid, you run these races for a wonderful cause to honor our young men and women, our service members. What about running do you think has been such an appropriate way to honor these folks?
Oh, wow. I think running, especially running a marathon, you're putting your heart and soul into it. You're enduring discomfort, you're enduring pain. And I think it, in a very small way, equates to what these young people serving in the military go through. And it's just to me, it seems more appropriate that all this effort goes into it. The medal I give to the families means a lot more. There are probably other ways I could honor them, but this seemed to be the most logical one for me.
And so in doing that, 204 times, or, most of these marathons have been to honor a particular serviceman or woman. I'm curious, is there one of these marathons or a couple of these marathons that stick out in your mind? Anything particularly memorable along the way?
Oh, I have a group of 5 or 6 that always stick out of my mind. Marine Corps and Air Force, because they're the service marathons. Disney World, because you get to run through your childhood. New York, because I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and a lot of the marathon goes through some of my old neighborhoods. The one that sticks out probably, and I will remember till the end of time, is Baltimore Running Festival. I originally had tried to complete my 200th marathon at the Air Force, and they had given me bid 200 and really went overboard, but it wasn't my day, and I didn't make it they have a cutoff before they close the back gate because it's still an active Air Force base, and I didn't make it. Well, Baltimore went overboard for me. They asked for volunteers. They wanted to form a six-person relay team of retired military, active military, firefighters, and so on to keep me company and keep me going, and they gave them free entry. Most of these people stayed with me for the complete 26.2 miles. And I was slow, and I was the last runner, I believe. I was about 2 or 3 miles from the finish, and this group of motorcycle police officers were coming up a hill, and I remember telling the woman next to me, they're going to pull me from the course. And I was running for a young man whose family was at the finish line. And one of the police officers broke free, came up alongside me and said, "You're Sid Busch." And I said, "Yes. We're here to escort you home." And for the final 3 miles, I had a motorcycle escort. And when I got to the finish, all the relay team and police officers had broken away from me, so I was there. And they had formed a corridor for me to run through, and they were all holding American flags, and the police officers were saluting. And the young kid I was running for, his mother and sister were holding the finish tape for me, and his dad gave me my medal. And I consider myself a hardened retired senior chief, but I lost it at that point. But that marathon I will remember forever.
Wow. I got to tell you, I've got goosebumps on me right now just hearing you talk about that. My good friend who works for Corrigan Sports Enterprises, who puts on that marathon, when I got near the finish, which is at Camden Yards, in between Camden Yards and their football stadium, he strapped a GoPro on me because he wanted to film it. And every once in a while, I watch that film and I relive it and puts tears in my eyes because these people who volunteered to be my relay team, God bless them all, because if it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have made it. But they thought enough of me to stick with me for 26.2 miles. Yeah, I've got to imagine, Sid, along the way, you have touched the lives of some of the family members of these folks. I'm just wondering if any of them have reached out to you or let you know in meaningful ways just how much it meant to them that you do this.
Yes, quite a few, and I never realized how much it would mean to them. I have one family, the Malachowskis. They live in Maryland, Westminster, and I had been reading an article where their son, James Malachowski, who was a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps, had been killed on his fifth deployment to Afghanistan. And they had been interviewing his mother, Allison, and she said the night before he left, he came into the kitchen, and he said his greatest fear was that if he died, nobody would know he had lived. And I sat there saying, at his age, he was 25, you shouldn't have thoughts like that. And I contacted the family and asked if I could run in his honor. And they graciously said yes. Since then, they've adopted me. Allison makes cookies for me. They treat me like family. I have other people who I've run for. They contact me and thank me. And it's a very humbling experience because they tell me what a great job I did. I had the easy part. I'm out there putting one foot in front of the other. Their sons or daughters did the hard part. They sacrificed their lives so we could live in a free country.
Absolutely. Wow. You know, as I was reading some of your some of the articles about what you've done, Sid, you know, I found myself wondering clearly, you know, you can't do too much reading without getting this picture of what you have done for others, what this has meant obviously to other family members. I'm curious though if along the way this journey has taught you something about yourself that you had never known. I mean, you've got a long military career, like you've just said. You're kind of a hardened guy, but I wonder if you've learned something about Sid along the way that maybe you wouldn't have learned outside of this journey.
Well, I learned I can put up with a lot more than I thought I could. I mean, back in 1985, I ran the Chicago Marathon, and at mile 22, there was a dimple in the pavement, and when I landed with my left foot, I twisted it so the sole of my foot was pointing outwards, and I screamed, limp hop, limp hop. But it's 4 miles to the finish, and I'm not going to drop out. And finally, I guess the endorphins kicked in, and I managed to finish the marathon. Long story short, when I got back to Charleston, my ankle had swelled all the way up, and I went to the Navy hospital. I had broken the stupid thing. And if I told them if I'd known I'd broken it, I'd been laying in the pavement screaming for a medic. But it taught me that I can endure a lot more than I thought I could. It also taught me the goodness of people. You know, sometimes the world, the way it goes, you begin to think that maybe dogs and cats should inherit the planet because we aren't doing that good a job as human beings. But I developed this following, which I'm never really comfortable with because I don't think I deserve it. But I've come through a few times where when I was driving up to New York, I was to visit my mom, and deer ran in front of my car, and pretty much a lot of damage. And people donated money so I could get my car fixed so I could continue to do what I do. And that just floored me.
Yeah, I say this all the time that, you know, I got into this running thing about 4 years ago, at least the kind of running I do now. And much more than the running, it has been the running community that I have fallen in love with. And much of what you just said, there's outside of the running community, there's days I question what we're all about, but inside this tight knit of this running community that I belong to is, I find myself saying a lot, boy, I wish we'd treat each other. I wish everybody would treat each other the way this running community does.
Back in 2006, that was the 100th anniversary of New Balance running shoes. And they had a contest where if you wrote an essay about what running in New Balance meant to you, you could win an all-expense-paid trip to the Chicago Marathon Hotel and all that. Well, I never win anything, but I wrote what running meant to me and everything, and unbelievably, I was picked as one of the winners. Well, the night before the marathon, they had a pasta dinner, and we had runners from all over the world, Russia, China, everywhere. And the table they put me at, I was sitting next to a woman from China who was a doctor, spoke fluent English, thank God, because I don't speak any Chinese. But here were 100 people from all over the world, different religions, different walks of life, different political beliefs. We all got along famously, and I think all of us agreed that maybe the rest of the world should take up running, because if we can get along, it would be great if everybody could do that. And another thing, I think, over 100 marathons ago, I started running carrying a 3x5 American flag. And I learned that when people say patriotism is dead, they are totally wrong. The reactions I get from people shows that with all our differences, people still respect the flag. Well, maybe not the NFL, but people still respect the flag. And I've had examples that one that I will always remember was I was doing the historic Marine Corps half in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I was running with my friend Steve. We both were carrying our flags. And we're running through this one neighborhood, and there was an elderly man sitting in front of his house in a lawn chair. And as we got closer, I noticed he had on his ball cap was World War II vet. And when he saw us, he pushed himself to a standing position and saluted. We stopped and went back to return his salute. But here is a member of the greatest generation, and I have they truly deserve that title. But, he had to be in his late 80s, and he still would not just sit there as we came by.
Wow. So headed to Arkansas, Sid, do you have somebody you're running for at Little Rock?
Yes, I'm getting the information now. Actually, he served in the military, and right now his name escapes me. I'm having a senior moment, but he served in the military and also a police officer who was killed in the line of action.
And so you say this is going to be your very last marathon?
Yeah, this is, I will be doing 5K, 10Ks, and halves, but I used to be able, there was a stretch, and it wasn't that terribly long ago, where I was doing the Air Force Marathon, Toronto Marathon, Baltimore Marathon, Marine Corps Marathon, and New York Marathon all in a row. For about 5 years, I did all of them in a row, and it didn't bother me. Now it's just I'm slowing down, and my body is telling me that it doesn't like doing marathons.
Well, at 72, buddy, I tell you what, I think you've probably outrun an awful lot of your contemporaries. I know that. Do you have any emotions going into that, knowing this is the last time you're going to line up for 26.2?
Yeah, quite a bit, quite a few. I love Little Rock. I've done Little Rock forever, it seems, and I have a closet full of costumes because I always volunteer at the expo also, but Little Rock has an 8-hour time limit, which for me is great because it relieves me of the pressure of pushing it too much. But this is one I'm gonna probably use up the full 8 hours, I think, because I want to remember it. Maybe if there is an afterlife, I can sign up for the Pearly Gates Marathon or the Fire and Brimstone, because I'm not sure which way I'm going yet.
Oh, I don't know, buddy. I think your heart seems to be in a lot of the right places. So I think there's a special marathon waiting for you.
Well, I'm gonna miss it terribly because it's become part of my life, and made a lot of friends and everything doing these marathons, and it's end of a stage of your life, and kind of a hint that we're not going to be here forever.
Yeah, I hear you. Anybody going to pick up your sort of pass off the baton? Do you have anybody who's?
Oh, I've got tons of people who have started to pick up the slack. They have asked me, to start sharing. I have a list of names that I can't live long enough to run in honor of. And one friend suggested that I have a raffle and raffle off my flag, because this flag has been with me for over 100 marathons, and raffle it off, says somebody, so they can, if the flag can at least carry on the tradition if I can't.
Well, I think it would be appropriate. I think somebody needs to carry that flag for you and carry this journey that you're on, carry it forward. It would seem appropriate that they would carry Sid's flag.
Yeah, I said it'd be nice to know at least the flag is still out there.
Absolutely. I'm curious if you were to try to talk somebody into running a marathon who maybe hadn't run one, what would you tell them? How would you talk them into the value of taking on this challenge?
Whoa. Well, it's the ultimate as far as, running. I mean, there are ultra marathons, but I think the standard marathon is still pretty much the ultimate. I would tell them that it's a goal that's well worth attaining. If you really don't know yourself until you've gone through the training, the getting up at early in the morning in the rain and lousy weather, or in the heat when you're sweating to death and torturing yourself, but that when you cross that finish line, I've run with a few people whose first marathons, and every one of them, for men and women, have tears in their eyes because they've achieved a goal that they didn't think they could do. So I would tell them that, it's something that even if you only do it once and you never run another marathon, that at least you know you had it in yourself to do it.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, I'm going to Little Rock. I ran my first marathon back in November of 2016. That was number one, and it was in Richmond. There was a 7-hour time limit, and I needed almost every minute of it. And then I just went down in January to Houston to try to do marathon number 2. It had a 6-hour limit, and the pace really caught up with me at mile 18, so I got pulled off the course. So I'm coming to Little Rock to do my second attempt at marathon number 2, so I am honored that I'm going to be sharing that course with you, and who knows, I may be back there coming home at that 8-hour mark with Sid.
Well, I hope you finish faster, but if you do, you're more than welcome to come with me. I mean, Little Rock, have you ever run Little Rock before?
I have not.
No, you haven't run.
No.
Little Rock is an amazing experience. The two women who are the race directors go all out for this. And the 8-hour time limit, they stay there till the last runner comes across. And a few years ago, they've had people who have exceeded 8 hours come across, and they treat them as winners. So, and it's a beautiful course. I mean, you get to see a lot of Little Rock, the capital, the whole works. It's a really nice course. It's challenging, but it's a nice course. And the medal is ridiculously big.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures. I said, I'm glad I'm not flying because I don't know if they'd let me carry that big thing home.
Well, when I used to fly to Little Rock, on the flight back to Charleston, the stewardess announced that I see we have a lot of people who finished the Little Rock Marathon. Would you please equally divide yourselves on either side of the plane so we can fly level?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Sid, I'm curious, before we kind of wrap up, you talk a lot about running, and you shared the story of the family of the young man who was just worried that, if something happens to me, people will forget about me. What words would you leave us with to help us understand what these folks are doing for us and how you would encourage us not to forget these folks?
When I first joined, was the Vietnam era. And that was a low point in being in the military. My everlasting memory of Vietnam was when I came home on leave after my first deployment there. A girl about my age came over, spit in my face, and called me a baby killer. These young men today who serve, men and women who serve in the military today, they do it for a love of country. They do it for an education, obviously, but they're not making that much money. And they're putting up with time away from home, hardships. Sometimes when the government shuts down, they're not even being paid for it. But they believe in what this country stands for enough to put their lives on the line. When you join the military, you sign a blank contract, pledging everything up to and including your life. And one of the things that annoyed me and got me into doing this was that most Americans had forgotten about these kids. As long as they could go to the mall or watch their sports on Sunday, they had been forgotten. And we can never forget that without what they're doing, we would be living in a free country. We would be running in a free country. And, it's something that keeps me going, because if it wasn't for running to honor these kids, I would just stay home and relax. But I can't do that. I have to make sure I remind people that these kids are still out there.
Well, Sid, I appreciate that. I thank you for your service. I thank you that you had the opportunity when I guess you thought your military career might be in jeopardy, that you had the forethought to say, hey, I'm going to run a marathon to prove to them I can still do this. Because I think that marathon journey has led to an incredible opportunity for you to keep us all aware that freedom isn't free. And I say, God bless you, brother. And I really
appreciate that.
I really look forward to meeting you in Little Rock and giving you a hug and personally thanking you down there. And it'll be an honor to be a part of your last marathon. It truly will be an honor.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will be at the expo Friday and Saturday. Just look for I have my knight in armor costume for this one.
Well, I can't.
So, but I'm looking forward to meeting you also.
I can't wait to take that picture. I've always wanted to have a picture taken with me and a man in a knight of shining armor.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Sid, I'll see you in Little Rock, buddy. And thanks again for your time today. And thanks again for your
no problem at all.
Hey, have a good day.
Thank you for doing this.
All right, buddy.
You too.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sid Busch. And I think maybe you understand now why I'm really looking forward to my journey to Little Rock, Arkansas, and getting my opportunity to meet Sid. I really look forward to seeing him in that shining armor costume. I'm sure that will be an expo treat. But what a true American, what a true serviceman, what a absolute competitor. I know that he's been running for this beautiful cause, and there's a lot of passion behind the why he runs, but I am just awed by the reality that this man is going to be running marathon number 205. And, I'm 53 years old, and some days I really feel my age when I'm out there trying to tackle these half marathons. And again, coming up on marathon number 2, take 2. So my second attempt, I promise you, when I was in Houston, I felt every bit of 53 years old. And so to think this man, 20 years my senior, is going to be there in Little Rock cranking out number 205. In addition to obviously the passionate heart of this man, there is a real strong athlete in there as well. So it'll be an honor to run the course there with Sid as he tackles his final marathon. I must say, my friend Robin has been following Sid for some time now, and she says that she has heard him say this is his final one before. And so we'll see. You can still hear a lot of that passion for running in Sid's voice, but I do believe that at some point your body just says that is a tough deal to get out there and run 26 miles. So I am glad to hear that he absolutely plans to keep on tackling some smaller races, the 5Ks, 10Ks, and I'm sure he will continue to bring awareness to these young men and women that he is passionate about them being remembered. I think it's important for us, as the freedoms we have, as we look around, that they aren't free. That I think Sid does us all a service by helping keep us focused and remembering what gets us gets us what we have here. So I appreciate that, Sid. So thank you all. I appreciate all of you for listening in on my conversation with Sid today. And as always, if you want to see more of what's happening with 21047.com, I encourage you to check out the website. And like I said earlier in the intro with the Patreon, if you're interested in being a Patreon supporter of this show and all my efforts, you can go to the website and just click on the Support Me tab, and that will tell you a little bit more about Patreon. And like I said, I have introduced now a private Facebook page for Patreon supporters, just to give them a little extra insight to what's happening and some additional perks for supporting me. The show will always be out there for everybody. My articles will always be for everybody, but I do hope to do some things here over the next year that will be a little extra special for those folks supporting through Patreon. So go check that out. I hope you all have a great week this week. Get out there and run until your hearts are content. If you don't have it in you to run this week, get out there and cheer and support for somebody who is. And if running is just not your deal, then I am really glad that you decided to come listen today. I think this is really one of those episodes that even if you're not a runner, you got to really appreciate who Sid Busch is and what he is doing with the sport of running. So anyhow, come back. Love to see you again. Hear you again. Talk to you again.